This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Consult with a qualified professional before making any investment decisions.
Welcome to the Wire Broker Edition, the week in real estate, presented in digestible bites. Hold on while our AI hosts take us on another ride through this week's top real estate headlines.
Welcome back, everybody, to Deep Dive Broker Owners. You're all here because you're right there. You're dealing with all the changes in the industry every day, trying to stay ahead of the curve, right? And we're here to try and help make sense of it all. This week, we've got a whole stack of articles from Realtor Magazine Media and RS Media. We're looking at, advice and strategies for agents all the way up to those big moves and mergers happening with the big brokerages. And as always, we want to cut through the noise and try to find those golden nuggets, those actionable insights you can actually put to work right away.
Absolutely.
So let's dive right in, huh?
Let's do it.
What jumps out at you right away, just taking a first look at, what's happening out there?
Well, I think the thing that really grabs my attention is this kind of interesting contrast we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got all these major brokerage firms. They're consolidating, they're expanding. It's all about, getting bigger, reaching further, right?
Right.
But then at the same time, when you look at the advice being given to individual agents, it's like going back to basics. It's all about those personal relationships, those one-on-one connections. It's really fascinating to see those two things happening at the same time.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's break down that brokerage activity first. We've got Brands by Integra acquiring Century 21 Rural Estates.
Yeah.
And that really looks like a pure growth play right there in New England. And, Jim D'Amico, the CEO, he's talking about unparalleled real estate services.
Right.
So it seems like they're not just going after numbers. They want a real strong presence. They want to build a reputation in that region. What do you see as the advantage of that kind of acquisition strategy?
Well, I think the biggest advantage is instant access, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get into the market immediately. They don't have to build up slowly from scratch. And they get all that talent, too.
Oh, yeah.
Those established agents who already know the local market, they've got those client relationships in place.
Right.
So, that can be a much faster way to really grab market share, especially in a competitive area like New England. And let's not forget the power of a known brand. They're absorbing that Century 21 recognition, too.
Absolutely makes sense. And then you've got that merger down in Richmond, Virginia. United Real Estate,
Mm-hmm.
Richmond and River City Blues Realty coming together to form RVA Blue Realty. And Jeffrey Finn called it a powerhouse of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does seem like they're trying to combine their strengths.
Yeah.
United's got that national network.
Right.
And then River City Blues Realty, they've got that expertise in helping home buyers.
Yeah.
What do you think are the ingredients that make a merger like this work versus, one that might not go so well?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's all about alignment.
Okay.
Their cultures have to mesh. They need to have a shared vision for how they're going to integrate. And, on paper, combining networks and expertise, it all sounds fantastic. But if those two companies, they have totally different ways of operating or their priorities clash,
Oh, yeah.
it can create more problems than it solves.
Right.
And I think the fact that Smitty Smith is taking on those leadership roles across both entities, that tells me they're really trying to make this transition smooth and keep everyone moving in the same direction.
Makes sense. And then we've got to talk about the luxury market.
Oh, yeah.
William Pitt Sotheby's International Realty. They're expanding into the Hudson Valley, and they're doing it by joining forces with Heather Kroner, Real Estate Sotheby's, and Paul Brunick even compared the region to the Hamptons.
Interesting.
So this seems like a very deliberate move to get into a specific high-end market. What's the advantage of partnering with an existing player like Heather Kroner, someone who's already got a good reputation there?
Well, in the luxury market, it's all about reputation. It's about who you trust.
Mm-hmm.
Heather Kroner, she's already deeply embedded in the Hudson Valley. She's got that network.
Right.
So for William Pitt, Sotheby's aligning with her, it's instant credibility.
Mm-hmm.
They get access to the right clients, the right properties. It's a shortcut to establishing themselves in a market where just having a big name might not be enough.
I gotcha. Now let's shift gears a bit geographically. Surrent is doing something really different. They're going into Phoenix, Arizona, and they're building from the ground up, no acquisitions, no mergers, just starting fresh. And they're looking for top agents who share their vision. Mm-hmm. What do you think that says about their overall ambitions?
I think it shows a lot of confidence in their brand and their approach.
Okay.
Starting from scratch, it gives them total control.
Right.
They're not inheriting any old systems or ways of doing things that might not fit with their vision. And by targeting agents who are already on board with their innovative ideas, they're creating a team that's going to be really cohesive and high performing. It tells me they're not afraid to build something new, and they believe they can attract the best talent even in a brand new market.
Interesting. And then we go international Weichert real estate affiliates. They're now in Portugal through a licensing agreement with Home Lovers, which is now Home Lovers Weichert,
Yeah.
and they're focusing on American buyers in Portugal. Miguel Tilley talked about the power of that American brand name. What kind of opportunities and challenges do you see with this kind of international expansion?
Well, the opportunity is huge, right?
Yeah.
You tap into a whole new market, you diversify your revenue streams, and Portugal is definitely a hot spot for some American buyers, so the target audience is there. But the challenge is navigating all the differences, the legal stuff, the cultural nuances, how you market yourself. Partnering with a local company like Home Lovers, that's key. They understand the Portuguese market, so that helps reduce the risk a lot.
Makes sense. And then we've got Coldwell Banker. They've been busy, a new regional VP, a new brokerage in Michigan through their inclusive ownership program, and a team jumping over from EdXP in New Jersey. It's like they're firing on all cylinders, right?
Yeah, they're not messing around.
What does all this activity tell us about what's happening in the industry right now?
It tells me the real estate landscape is dynamic, it's competitive, and these big players, they're not sitting still. They're actively looking for ways to grow to grab market share. Whether it's leadership changes, strategic partnerships focused on inclusivity, or attracting top-performing teams, these big brands, they're hungry, they're evolving, and I think it shows a belief in the future of real estate, even with all the ups and downs we're seeing.
Okay, so we've looked at all this brokerage activity. What's the main takeaway here for our listeners?
Yeah.
What should they be paying attention to?
I'd say the overarching theme is strategic adaptation.
Okay.
These brokerages aren't just expanding randomly. They're making calculated moves to get stronger in specific markets. They're catering to specific types of clients, or they're embracing new ways of doing business. As a broker owner, you've got to keep your eyes open, look at your own market, who's growing, how are they doing it, and what does that mean for you? How can you stay competitive?
Makes sense. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the advice being given to agents. Christine Hansen from NIR, she really emphasized relationship building, focusing on your sphere of influence, researching potential sellers, making sure your online presence leads to real-life conversations.
Yeah, classic advice for a reason.
It does feel like going back to basics. So why is that so important right now?
Because in a market that's maybe a little shaky, buyers and sellers are being more cautious. Those strong relationships, they become your foundation. Your sphere of influence. They already trust you reaching out to them proactively, understanding what they might need. Having those real conversations that builds loyalty. It can lead to deals right away or referrals. And then your online presence becomes a way to nurture those relationships and bring new people into that circle of trust.
Okay, and Sebastian Frey, he gave some advice about navigating the spring market. He talked about the usual supply and demand stuff, and he encouraged sellers to list early to take advantage of the increased buyer activity. He also pointed out that there will probably be more new listings this spring, and that agents need to help sellers understand what that might mean for how long their property is on the market.
That's a good point.
What's the main message here that broker owners should be passing on to their agents?
I'd say it's all about education and being proactive. Agents need to be armed with the data, and they need to be good communicators so they can explain what's happening in the market to both buyers and sellers.
Right.
The spring market can be a great opportunity, but sellers need to understand the competition. There might be more inventory out there. Agents who can provide those data-driven insights and realistic expectations, they're going to be invaluable to their clients.
So we've got these big strategic moves happening at the brokerage level, and then this very grounded, relationship-focused advice for agents. And this is what I find so interesting. It's this contrast between those massive growth strategies and this really basic, timeless advice for individual agents. You'd think in a world of big data and all this technology, the advice for agents would be all about that stuff. But instead, the experts are saying, no, it's about those personal connections. It's about understanding your local market. It suggests that even as the industry gets bigger and embraces technology, the heart of the business is still that human connection and that local expertise.
You're absolutely right. It's a great observation. All the technology and the bigger networks, they can help make things more efficient. They can expand your reach. But they can't replace that trust, that rapport that a good agent builds with their clients. It's a good reminder that even with all the changes, some things never go out of style.
They don't, do they? So to wrap it all up for our broker owners listening, what's the key takeaway from all of this?
I'd say the key takeaway is to lead with a dual focus. You need to be aware of those big trends, the growth and consolidation happening all around you, understand who's expanding, where they're doing it, and why, and then think about how that impacts your business. At the same time, you've got to really empower your agents, give them the tools to build those relationships, really know their market and communicate clearly, equip them with the data they need to be those trusted advisors, especially as we head into the spring market. Your strength as a brokerage is going to come from being able to navigate those big trends and also nurture those one-on-one connections that make your agents successful.
Absolutely. So as you're thinking about all this, think about how those big brokerage strategies might create opportunities or challenges in your market. And even more importantly, how are you helping your agents become those trusted advisors who can build those lasting relationships?
It's a great question to consider. How do you balance the need for strategic growth and adaptation as a brokerage with the need to cultivate and support those essential people skills in your agents?
That's something to think about this week. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll keep an eye on all these trends and keep you informed.
Until next time, keep those connections strong and your strategies sharp.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
If you're interested in your own personalized edition of The Wire, please visit us at thewire.fm/custom. We offer market-specific podcasts with all the latest real estate news and market analysis delivered to you weekly or monthly. Own your market with a personalized edition of The Wire, The Week in Real Estate. Thank you for listening.